Okay, second grade. So today we're going to be reading a book called When the Bees Fly Home. While we're doing this, I want us to be thinking about the main idea of this book. So we want to look at the title, some words that we see over and over again, and then we're going to think about what this book is mostly about. Now, when we're going to read this book, we want to ask some questions before we read it, while we read it, and after we read it. This is going to help us get better at asking and answering questions and seeing if we can find the answers of our questions inside the book. So before I start off, I wanted to introduce the book, When the Bees Fly Home by Andrea Chang. The illustrations are by Jolene McFadden. And when I'm looking at this cover, I'm noticing the title, I'm noticing the pictures on the page. So some of my questions to start off are, where is the bees' home? So where are the bees flying if they're flying home? Another question I might ask myself is, how do bees pollinate flowers? I know a little bit about bees. I know that bees pollinate flowers, but I wonder if this book might tell me how they pollinate flowers. So let's go ahead and begin. When the bees fly home. The beeswax is smooth. I pass it from hand to hand until it is soft enough to mold. Then I form the shimmering wings of a honeybee. Below here, I also want you to show you that we have some bee facts that we'll see throughout the book. So every time we see a bee fact, I'm going to read that, and that's where we're going to find some of those answers to the questions that we're asking. Remember that we're asking questions that relate to what we think the main idea of the story might be. So we're looking at title, repetitive words, and we're going to look at some of these words that are within our bee facts to see if we can find some answers there. So this first fact is, in a flight, a bee's 2 pairs of wings move 180 times per second, but it only flies at about 15 miles per hour. A dragonfly can fly twice as fast. Dad calls me. Jonathan, come and unload these supers. So I set my bee down gently in a corner of a truck and jump to the ground. Dad is silent as he works. The muscles in his arm bulge and shine with sweat. His face strains with the weight of the supers and the stress of this dry spell. Suddenly, I drop a super on my toe and cringe as I wait for the pain to hit. Get back in the truck, Dad orders. I go, but I still hear him mutter. He says I might as well stay home. I am no help at all. So I'm wondering what a super is. I'm thinking maybe it's some kind of bee, but what exactly is a super? As I inspect my swollen toe, I know Dad is right. My arms are so skinny. Even my 4-year-old brother is stronger. He likes to say that he is a beekeeper like Dad. He goes around the house wearing a sheet like a bee veil and pretending to smoke the hives. Not me. I just want the wax. Dad heads off towards the hives without even a word to me. I think at first of following him to see the honeybees come and go as they fly around the hive. I like to watch them, and sometimes I see them do their dance. But my toe is throbbing. I stay in the truck and form the thick body and tiny legs of my wax bee. You can see here we have another bee fact. I wonder if it's going to make me think of any questions or going to answer any of my questions. Scout bees do a special waggle dance to give the other workers directions to where there are flowers with lots of nectar. They dance faster if there is so much nectar that they need more bees to bring it in. When Dad comes back, he's mad because he got stung under his eye. But I think he feels bad about my toe because he tosses me a big glob of fresh wax for the ride home and offers me a drink of iced tea from the thermos. Dad says that the dry spell has gone on so long that the honey will be slim this year. The clover blossoms are small and few. The locust flowers are wilting in the sun. That means less money than the little we already have. We pass the ice cream store, and I hope for a second that Dad will stop because of my toe, but instead, he speeds up. We have another bee fact here. Each hive has one queen bee who lays about 1,500 eggs per day. Thousands of female worker bees who do all of the work and guard the hive, and several hundred male bees called drones who live in the hive until they are needed to mate with a new queen from another hive. When we pull in, Mom is working in the garden. My brother Nicholas runs to the truck, and I see Dad smile like he never does at me as he picks up his sturdy son. Mom knits her brow when she sees me hop. What happened? She asked. Dropped a super on my toe, I say, sitting down in the grass. We have another bee fact. During the honey gathering season, there are 40,000 to 60,000 bees in a beehive. Worker bees live for about 35 days. They do not sleep, but sometimes they will rest in an empty cell. So a question I'm wondering right now is, it looks like they're gathering honey. How do bees gather honey? So I'll be looking out and seeing if this text will answer my question. How do bees gather honey? Mom gets ice wrapped in 2 checker towels to hold on my toe. Then she waits to see what I have made today. She picks up the bee carefully and turns it around in her hand. Perfect, she says. I know she will set it on the shelf by her bed with the other tiny wax animals, a cow with its calf, and a pair of geese. I know she looks forward to each new addition. Another bee fact. For a hive to make 2 pounds of honey on a good day, its worker bees will fly 110,000 miles and bring back nectar from 4 million flowers. Each bee can carry half her body weight in pollen and nectar. 110,000 miles. We just did our unit on measurement, so we know that 110,000 miles has to be a lot, because just 1 mile is so much. Mom looks over at Dad. How was the day? Dad doesn't answer, so I do. The same, I say. She points to the drooping parsley. I watered this morning and look. I nod. Only Nicholas didn't seem to care about the dry spell. He shows Dad how strong he is getting. Dad feels his muscles and says, yes, it really is very big. Another bee fact. As bees gather nectar and pollen, they brush the pollen against the female part of a plant so that it produces seeds or fruits or vegetables or grains. Much of the food that we grew because it was pollinated by bees. Interesting. So that will lead me to one of my answers. How do bees pollinate flowers? One of my questions that I asked at the very beginning. So I wonder if we're going to stop talking about pollination and how bees pollinate flowers. That night, my toe throbs and I cannot sleep. I think about the bees. They are getting sluggish. Their dances are slow. Only Dad works in a frenzy. I get up and hop into the kitchen to get more ice. And another bee fact. The first common honeybees in North America were brought by the Pilgrims to pollinate the apple trees. Native Americans called these honeybees the white man's fly. There is Mom at the stove. What are you doing? I ask. Making candles, she says. The smell is sweet, like the wax I always mold in my hands. Tomorrow is the farmer's market. I will try to sell a few. She pours the wax into small square molds. When it hardens, I take them out and set them in a line on the table. Ordinary candles. I make a tiny chick with a drip of wax. Suddenly, I have an idea. Another bee fact. Bees bring nectar back to the hive in their special honey stomachs and give it to house bees in the hive, who store it in empty cells. Enzymes from the bees and evaporation concentrate the nectar into honey. How about I decorate your candles, I say. I make a family of tiny wax ducks and press it onto the top of a candle. Then I form a few small honeybees and arrange them around the side of the candle. I make the candle into their home. The bees are flying into the hive to avoid the rain, I tell Mom. Mom strokes my skinny arm. She adjusts the ice on my toe. Better? I nod. Our bee fact is, worker bees build honeycomb with wax they secrete from their abdomen. They build hexagonal cells to store honey or pollen and to house their baby bees in peanut-shaped cells to hold infant queen bees. I noticed this word hexagonal. I wonder if that word maybe means a hexagon shape. We've been learning about hexagons in geometry, so we're talking about a shape with 6 sides and 6 corners. Go ahead and pause here, and I want you guys to take a quick break, pause the video, and write down any of your during questions that you're thinking about during the activity. On your worksheet, you should be filling in the during section of your worksheet. Okay, once you've done that, we'll go ahead and hop back into the story. By morning, the table is covered with our animal candles. Dad gets up before the sun and looks over our work. He picks up the candle with the bees. Do you think we could save this one? He asks. What for? I ask. For me, he says, putting it on the windowsill. Then he looks more closely at how I have arranged the bees near the entrance of the hive. Together we look out at the kitchen window. The sun is rising between the thick gray clouds. The air is heavy. Your bees may know something we don't, he says. Bees cluster around the queen in the hive during a cold winter, eating honey, vibrating and trading places to keep warm. To cool the hive in hot weather, they bring water into the hive and evaporate by fanning their wings. Our candles sell fast. By 10 o'clock, there are no more. Our coffee can is full of money. A lady stops at our empty table. Got any more? She asks. I shake my head. All sold out, says Mom. Can I place an order then? What I'd like is a snail candle. I write that down and tell her that I'll have it next week. By noon, we have more than 40 new orders. So next week, we'll be talking a little bit about economics and some goods and services. So they're trading money for his service, which is creating these candles. The candles are the goods, so the actual object the customers are buying, but they're paying him for the service to actually make them. When Dad comes home, we show him our heavy coffee can and my order sheet. He can hardly believe it. He stays up late with me and Mom as we work on our next batch of candles. Amazing, he says as I form the antenna of a snail and then stick it on the candle. Dad lights the wick of his bee candle. The bees were flying home all day today, Jonathan, he says. I wonder if I'm going to find my answer about where is the bee's home. I have an idea, but I'm remembering my question from the very beginning, so I'm looking to see if I can answer that in the text. My bee fact is, wild bees will make their home in a hollow tree or between the walls of a building. The modern hive box is designed so that we can remove the honey without killing the bees or destroying their home. This time, we make even more candles. With turtles and frogs and doves, Dad holds the extra wax in his hand so that it will be warm and easier to mold. Suddenly, we hear a sound like tapping on the window. I look at Dad. He picks up the bee candle and the three of us go out to the front porch. The raindrops are big and far apart at first, but in a few minutes it's pouring. I'm going in, Mom says. Just like the bees. I go in when it rains. A bee fact is, each bee colony has its own distinct odor, and its bees can recognize hive members or robber bees by smell. When a worker bee stings, she dies afterwards because her sting has barbs and she can't pull it out without tearing her abdomen. I've heard of that happening before. I've heard of bees not being able to live after they've stung someone. I wonder if you have. We hear the screen door slam. Then a gust of wind blows out the candle. But Dad and I are not ready to go in yet. We walk into the darkness of our front yard. Your bees were right, Dad says. Then we just stand there with our arms touching, feeling the water run down. My last bee fact is, the survival of a bee colony depends upon thousands and thousands of bees working together, each one doing its job. That's the end of our book. So some questions I'm wondering after I've read the book that I might be able to answer and go back is, what kind of bees are there? I remember the book talking about a few different kinds of bees. So I wonder if I could go back into the book and find my answers. Some examples that I remember that I could go back and find in the actual pages are queen bees, worker bees, robber bees, or scout bees. What kind of bees did you remember? Another question I had was, what is a queen bee? I know that the book talked about what a queen bee did, so I could go back in the text and I could find one of my pages that talks about queen bees. Like this page right here, my bee fact says, each hive has one queen bee who lays about 1,500 eggs per day. So that's one fact about queen bees. So that might tell me an answer to my question. So I could use the book and what I read and saw in my facts to answer my questions. So go ahead and ask a question that you think you could answer using the text and put that in your after section on your worksheet.